Dan.
Good morning. Look, you sipping coffee, I see.
I got my timing wrong. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Oh, good. Just
Awesome.
hanging out. It's kind of cloudy today.
I know yesterday was so beautiful. It was like 80 something here. So
Yeah.
or close to it at least.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to the show. We have an exciting lineup today. We'll be talking with Patrick Jones here in a bit, who is the director of research here at QuestionPro, talking about research trends. He knows 5 languages, so I want to quiz him. Yeah, I want to quiz him here to see if he can say market research in each language. We'll see, but
so fun.
Yeah. And then I know we have some announcements that we'll get to here. So we'll excuse me if I can talk today. We're going to be at IIEX in April. So if you're coming to IIEX, make sure that you reach out to us. Would love to connect with you. And I know Crystal and I are planning a little bit of, to show you the town and from people that actually live in Austin. So
right. Yeah. We're going to put together a true Austin guidebook for our customers or anyone else who wants to come, and make sure that you map out your schedule so that you can come hear our own Tim Cornelius speak.
Yes.
At IIEX on Tuesday, the first day. And he'll be speaking about how your sampling is your online research is disqualifying those with disabilities. And I know that he is really passionate about equality across all demographics and all capacities. So that will be really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I know we've done a lot here at QuestionPro to help facilitate this, and Tim has done his own bit of research and really pushing this along. So he'll be speaking about that. So that's exciting. And then I know I'll be there. Crystal will be there. Bunch of other people from QuestionPro. So
I know the list is getting pretty long.
I know. It's pretty exciting stuff. I like it.
For sure. And then also make sure to join the Women in Research event the night before. We'll also be there, and they are just such a great organization that we love to support.
Yeah, so we'll be there. I know I've been to some other of their events, and it's been great. So definitely check them out. They're a great organization.
Because I work at QuestionPro, am I considered a woman in research? Or
I think you are considered a woman in research, but I don't know. Are you part of the women in research?
No, because I always just assumed that I was like out on the outside, because I'm not really a practitioner.
You should definitely join. I think
I'm just like a fan. I'm a woo girl for market research.
I feel like when you first joined, you probably couldn't, but now that your research knowledge has gone up,
I can use things in sentences properly.
Yeah. You're finally able to join. I think you've passed the qualifications. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then another big announcement is Work at Life Season 4. So, Crystal, you know all about this.
Work at Life. If you haven't listened to our podcast with Sonia Lucina, PhD, and Maddie Grant from Propel, they are doing a man, we both got tongue tied.
There's something in the water here in Austin. I don't know.
They have been doing an amazing podcast, and it used to be a live show, pivoted to a podcast about just equality in the workplace, women in the workplace, and how you can how work and life are not a work/life balance. Life is something you live while you're working, and how it's all integrated. And they'll be coming out with a season 4 on the HubSpot podcast network.
Awesome. That's super
we
exciting.
Are pretty excited about that.
When does that come out?
I don't know. I was like, I think soon, maybe that's a great question, Dan.
Yeah. Let's say in a few months. How about
that? Love that. So, and Dan, are you, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. I take it back.
Am I doing any speaking or anything soon?
I was like, do you have a speaking engagement coming up? But then I think it's someone else. So never mind.
Yeah. The only one I have is in April. I'll be doing a webinar with me, Ray Pointer, and I will be doing a webinar with SMR and MRII around continuous discovery. So more information to come on that in a few weeks, but that's an exciting thing that we have coming up here. And I hope to be doing more speaking opportunities later this year. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Oh, here, I'm gonna drop the Work at Life Apple podcast into the. I
Okay.
listen to Apple Podcast. That might be.
I think it's good. People can find it from there.
I was like, not everyone does. There's like Spotify listeners and like Google Podcast and Stitcher and all of them.
Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Well, those are some announcements that we have. Let's go ahead and bring in Patrick Jones here.
Woo!
Patrick, welcome.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Awesome. So Patrick is the Director of Research Services here at QuestionPro. Started in December, but I think you really started in January. I think that's like what I'll say. You've been here about 2 months, I would say, something like that. So, Patrick, I know we talked earlier, and I've known this obviously, but you speak 5 languages. My question is, and I kind of gave this away earlier when we spoke, but in those 5 languages, how many can you say? Man, Crystal, I cannot talk today.
I was like, should we have just called and been like, live and dance?
Yeah, and that's a wrap. Yeah, no.
6 minutes long today.
In those languages, how many of them can you say market research?
I guess all of them, more or less. But I was thinking about it, so I should mention. So in terms of the languages, so I'm Canadian. I thought I spoke with a very neutral accent until Crystal immediately said, "Oh, are you in Canada?" And I've learned now that I suppose I don't. So of course I grew up in Eastern Canada, so I grew up in a French area. Although my family is completely English. That was my first exposure to another language. And then I ended up going overseas to teach English, and I ended up studying Japanese, Chinese, and then Spanish. My wife is from Mexico.
Awesome.
So at different points, I've had different levels of interest in market research. In Japan, I was bartending and not so interested in market research at that time. So I did have to double check.
Yeah, that's true.
How to say it there, but yes, I can say it in all of those languages.
Do you care to share?
So yeah, you want to hear some? I mean, the easy ones, in French, it's just basically market research. Recherche. Now I'm going to trip my words up. But recherche de marché. In Spanish, it's just similar. Investigación de mercado. Market research, more or less.
Yeah.
And then in
more
Chinese,
or less, but they sound different.
Yeah, they sound different to me too. I'm like, it's basically the same. No, they sound different to me.
It's basically a direct translation, and then same thing. It's really is a direct translation. In Chinese, you have market research, so 市场调查. 市场 is market, and then 调查 is to investigate or look into something. And then I took a double check because in Japanese, you can use the same characters. The same characters will be shijo chosa. So it doesn't really sound the same, but if you show it to 2 people, they would both look at it and go, "Oh, I know what that means," even though they would not be able to communicate with each other at all. But also in Japanese, they will just say things like "maketo research." Okay. So if you say that in Japan, they will probably understand what you mean.
Perfect. In all fairness, that's what I would say if I was in Japan.
So yeah, there's a lot of words that they borrow from English, especially when it's just something that's like a concept that is like relatively new. Right. So the newer the word, the better chance you have at just saying it with in English with a Japanese accent, and they'll be like, "Oh, I know what you mean."
Right. That's interesting. I love that. So, how did you get started in market research, Patrick?
So I went to the University of Ottawa and did a degree in political science, and of course, living in Ottawa, the capital, I thought like I would end up working in opinion research or things with public policy. And I did work for a year after university for a company that did work just on government contracts. Really boring stuff. The most boring research you could imagine. I worked on a project where I tracked what schools photocopied as part of to look at photocopy licensing legislation, and literally just sitting next to photocopiers.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I got a lot of reading done.
Yeah.
So I did that for a year, and while I was working there, I had some coworkers who had done a postgraduate program in research analytics, and they had much more interesting jobs than I did.
Right.
So I thought, okay, that's something to keep in mind. They were really happy with it. So I said, oh, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to go, take one year, because I had grown up in Ottawa. I'd had kind of enough of being there for the time. So I said, I'll take 1 year off, and I'm going to go teach English in Japan, just for something to do different. That turned into 9 years in Japan, China, and then Mexico. But
wow, that's awesome.
During that time, I never lost track of sort of this idea of coming back. And I actually worked for a company called Wall Street English in China. It's a multinational school, so they're all over the place in Europe and stuff as well. And it's a really data-driven organization. So while I was working, I managed a school in Beijing, and got sort of, we were constantly tracking all these different metrics and different KPIs for our students and their study habits, our courses, our course materials, how they are structured. And, that sort of reawakened my sense that, I don't know this very well. Like I'm learning, there's a lot of analytics things that I kind of know in concept, but I'd like to know better. Yeah. So I came back to Canada and did a 1 year postgraduate program, and then I kind of hit the ground running here. And I've been working now for about 5 or 6 years in a few different roles. Most recently doing a lot of stuff with employee engagement, culture surveys, and again, back to just a lot of government work before joining with QuestionPro, where I get to do a lot more interesting, a lot more diverse types of.
I really, really want to now run like an internal poll of our company now, because first of all, everyone at our company has such diverse backgrounds. I love it. And two, I want to find out the weirdest survey project people have worked on. I feel like.
You'd get some answers. I know it'd be super interesting.
Yeah. Also, Patrick, I have a question about your bartending days. As you are a very analytical person, were you that bartender that was really wanted to know the person to be okay, did you ask a lot of questions of your patrons? Because I feel like you'd be that bartender, be I'm gonna peer into your soul.
It was a great way to just practice Japanese. So I was working in a small city, very few people could speak English. So I happened to become friends with the bartender around the corner from where I worked, because I was a bit of a regular, let's say. And then he was like, "Why would you want to work here? You have a real job." I was like, "No, this is great." So I talked to everyone who would listen. I was chatting everybody's ear off.
That's funny.
I can see that. That's awesome. Perfect. Well, let's get on the research track here. But I do like your question, Crystal.
Bring me back to some glory days.
Yeah, well, maybe we can do another live with Dan where we just talk about the glory days. That actually be interesting, I think. So what areas of research interest you the most? I know obviously you've had a diverse background, but I'd love to hear sort of what areas of research are, sort of your favorites and things that you like to do and things that you really find interesting.
Yeah. So I've always been interested in, opinion and behavioral research. I guess, sort of, I started off with a background in political science and was, following a lot of just sort of opinion trackers, things like that. And then as we've hit the smartphone era, behavioral surveys used to be really all about tell me what you did. And then you have to go through the filter of people remembering what they did. And, maybe they're sitting at a computer and it's not pen and paper, but it still isn't much better. And so we call mobile ethnography, the idea of having something on your phone that tracks, rather than at the end of the day saying, oh, you went shopping somewhere, tell me about your experience, to be able to really have, track people's behavior in the moment and have people tell you about their experience, tell you about their decision-making process, tell you about the influences, the things that are happening, and really provide, again, not necessarily just write it down in a text box and we'll look through it, but be able to take pictures, take video. Now we have scanners on our phones, so you can scan the barcodes of things. So I really am interested in sort of, this just opens up so much into what drives people's decisions. I know for me, I'm trying. It's like way late now to talk about the holiday season, but I've been eating junk food for 2 months now. And I keep thinking, how does my closet, like how does my pantry keep getting full of cookies and gummy bears? And I guess I'd be curious to know, because I feel like I'm trying to eat healthier, but every day I end up with more groceries that are not healthy. So these kinds of things that I'm always kind of curious, and it goes with, again, lots of behavior. Like again, I'm trying to exercise more, and you can kind of track those kinds of things in much greater detail.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I love the ethnography part of it, and following, and learning about the different behaviors, why people are doing things. And I think people are, lots of times they don't even know that they're doing them until they're actually like tracking them, right? So it's kind of
that's it. Asking people what they've done is a lot less accurate than getting people to tell you about what they're doing.
Right. Right. That's interesting. That's a good quote. I like that. And this is, I mean, it's key for a lot of companies too, right? Like obviously they want to predict behavior, and then they can make more money. That's why they're doing market research. But what are some of the reasons that you think that a company should invest in research?
It's on a certain level, it's very, very straightforward. Have more information. I think data-driven decision making is almost like a bit of a cliche at this point. I think it's kind of before my time that we had people shooting from the hip, making business decisions just on their gut. But a lot of organizations still, it's people, they trust their instincts. They trust if you have a strong organization with good leadership, it can be hard to sort of break out of a sort of fixed perspective on things, because what got them to this sort of level of success, they're going to continue to do that. So I always kind of think of it like, imagine if you were driving with just your fog lights. An experienced driver in a car that drives well, they're going to be able to get where they're going. But you turn the lights on, and suddenly you can avoid obstacles much further in advance. You can see opportunities that you might have otherwise missed, and you can go a lot faster. So just having that information in front of you is sort of the first step. Just being able to see all this information. And the second reason is that information is sort of, especially nowadays, that flow of information can become a bit overwhelming. So a lot of times, you might be able to capture lots of information, but doing research isn't just capturing information. Doing research is analyzing it, understanding it. And that's where, you take that sort of fire hose and turn it into a faucet, and you can, get what you need. And again, if you know where you want to go, or, you can see opportunities you might have missed, then you can, find the information that supports that, or maybe tells you, hey, like that's not the best direction to go. So, it seems that, and you got to understand that, in today's competitive atmosphere, other companies are going to be doing that. Other organizations are going to be finding the best ways to inform their decisions. So if you're not, that puts you at a serious disadvantage potentially.
No, I think that's interesting. I love when you said that it's not just about collecting the data, it's about analyzing it as well, right? Like if you don't analyze it, it's just sitting there, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like a little bit tongue in cheek, but the research mullet that I talk about, right? Where you have like the business in the front, the party in the back. In the front, the business part is like collecting the data. It's like what you need to do to get the insights. But then the party is like when those insights actually happen, and you analyze them. And that's where like the magic, the fun is. That's why you do it. So the research mullet is something internally that I've talked about. Just in terms of like
the research mullet, Dan. I think you should grow a mullet.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
As a real dedication to the metaphor. They're coming back in style.
I was going to say, I think it's coming back. I've seen some non-ironic mullets.
The problem's not the style. The problem is my ability to grow the mullet. I think I'm losing that ability. So, no, I love that, Patrick. That's interesting that you mentioned that, because it's something that I think is so important. What sort of, we talked about areas of research that interest you the most, why a company should do research. What are some emerging trends that you are seeing in research that you think people should know about?
So sort of, I guess a little bit in line with my interest in mobile ethnography I mentioned is what we call nowadays, I I had not heard of this expression until, probably somewhat recently, is what they call now social listening. So, and again, I not to date myself, but I remember when Facebook started, you would, you go out, maybe even meet people, hey, get their name, then you go back and you sit at a computer, and then Patrick is feeling, tired after going.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you would, you would update it and you would post things, but the amount that you would post would be, like much less. Let alone when you start to add in all the different sort of networks that the average person uses nowadays. So the volume that people are sort of producing and sort of and putting out to share has grown exponentially, and the amount of people engaging with it as well. Maybe before you remember back in the day of like, 47 friends, 58, 100.
Yeah.
Now, you sometimes you make friends with somebody who's very outgoing and connected, and you're like, really? You have 2,400 contacts? Okay. but I guess every one of them is someone special to you, I'm sure.
Right.
But so there's a lot more content going out, and a lot more content being engaged with. People are liking it. And again, it used to be there was nothing, then there was a thumbs up. Now there's depending on the platform, multiple different ways that people can engage with it. From thumbs up to an angry face. So there's this increasing wealth of data out there. That sheds light on everything from people, what they're doing on the weekend, to how they're feeling with burnout and trauma, to their fitness experiences, even fitness apps tracking where you run, and then you post, hey, just did my 10K. So there's all this content out there, and then at the exact same time as that has been increasing, the ability, that would be sort of limited value if we just needed to get more and more people to read through it and then think about what did they say. But we now have AI sentiment analysis that is able to comb through this data with increasing accuracy. So again, that sort of getting all the data, okay, good, it's good to have, but it's the understanding it. So we're seeing now the ability to really listen in and look for what people are searching for, what people are tagging, but even just the text, like the literal content of what they're writing, getting an idea of surges and ebbs and flows in what people are talking about through all of these postings, all done, through AI. In fact, QuestionPro, of course, we also have a proprietary AI sentiment analysis. And, this is just, that's getting better and better. And this is just something that, where it is now is impressive compared to where it was a few years ago. And it's only going to continue to grow. So, whether it's like a company that wants to just know if people are talking about their new shoes, or, a government agency trying to understand the needs of the people in its community, it's like, where these people are, what they're talking about, and you're seeing it. And it's like, okay, like, everybody's, stuck at this intersection that's causing everyone a headache, and this,
right.
It can be for anything. But, instead of having to reach out and directly engage people and say, okay, let's, we'll get people, find a group, we'll get them to do this survey, we'll analyze the data. It's more passive, ongoing. And then, it's a matter of collecting it and filtering it into something that you can really work with. So I think that's interesting now, but it's going to be really interesting in a few years.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I want to put you on the spot a little bit here in terms of the amount of data out there. How do you decide like what's important?
Well, that is the real tricky thing now. And I think that the rise of like AI, even as a tool, not to just leave it to a computer to do, but to just help so that, a person, there's only so many of us, can really look through large amounts at once and start to look through what matters and what doesn't. And you always kind of got to work backwards. So if you start with that flow of data and try to figure out what's important, like that, there you can definitely do that. I don't want to say that there's no value there, but if you don't know what you're looking for, or you haven't sat down and thought about what kinds of questions, what kinds of themes or things that are important before you begin, you can spend a lot of time just going through and finding a lot of noise and saying, oh, well, this is interesting, especially if you're interested, if you're if you're a data analyst, like, look at this, look at that.
Right.
So, and that's the challenge with us so often, is making sure before we get things rolling that we have a good conversation, a good understanding of a client's needs, before we even start to develop the research, let alone field the project, so that we can, make sure we're putting our energy into collecting and analyzing information that's relevant to their needs.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And it's really, you have to define your research question, right? And like, what are you trying to research, or what are you trying to solve for? And then specifically look at that aspect of the data, right? Or the area of the data. This kind of leads me into my kind of last question for you, although we can keep talking if you'd like. What do you think is the most important part of the research process?
So I'm sort of torn as an analyst.
I'll let you pick two.
So I'm like at the back, the back end, the part where I do all my work. It's clearly the most important.
Obviously.
But I was thinking of that and thinking of what I was just saying. I do think framing things probably at the beginning. I mean, to a certain level, I guess everything's important. You don't want to drop the ball anywhere. But yeah, I think actually coming up with good research questions, and having, starting off on the right foot is actually, if you ask the wrong questions, all the analysis in the world, all the best, flow charts, infographics, it's just not gonna lead you to a conclusion or to a result that really means something. And in fact, just the opposite. You can invest a lot of resources in deep diving into the wrong question, and it'll actually cost you something. It's not just it will actually take you in the wrong direction. So I guess I will say the beginning, but then once you get off on the right foot, you don't want to misstep, by fielding a survey to the wrong people, or shortcutting on the on the analysis. So, but we'll say the start.
No, I think that makes sense, right? And so much needs to go into the preparation to make sure that you're researching the correct thing. I think is so important. Awesome. Well, I think with that, Patrick, I appreciate you joining us today. That was super interesting. Love learning about the different languages. I don't remember how to say market research in any of the languages you mentioned. You said, but I would love to learn
Japanese, because they would just say.
Oh yeah, I could do Japanese. Yeah. I'll spare everyone my Japanese. So, awesome. So thank you, Patrick. And I think with that, Crystal, we can wrap up the show.
Oh,
today.
I had one question.
Oh, sorry. Should have said.
See, I was trying not to raise my hand because it seems a little, but I was like, I should have just raised my hand.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that as somebody who's done marketing since since Facebook has been about, the fact that listening is now coming into market research, like we've been doing that literally our entire careers. Like I remember doing campaigns and then searching, just using the find, Control F, trying to find tweets that said certain words, or exporting replies and searching that. We've been doing that in marketing for years. That's how influencers target people. That's those kind of trends, I feel are almost out of date now.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So for me, I've never done that of going Control F and then typing in a word, but I suppose, yeah, it makes sense.
It was before. I mean, that was long before. That would have been circa 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. There were only so many ways. Control F was my best friend. Find all these keywords that I need. And using social media listening tools long before they were before market researchers were using them, I guess now. And that's definitely, it makes me wonder if as marketing trends now with doing micro influencers, and that's kind of the trend now, if that will be a trend in a few years for market researchers saying, and seeing how those ebb and flow together.
Yeah, I think some of the things with social listening, it's market research loves they love big data points, right? And lots of data points. And I think a lot of it to me is kind of finding out what you really need and what's important when you're listening. I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen. I mean, I've seen some studies, in the past, and even in 2008, I remember I was at this conference and there was someone talking about It's like the word of mouth research association or something like that. I can't remember the exact acronym, but they were doing something kind of similar to this, but they were researching, I think it was for Visa, I want to say something like that, but they were searching for Visa, but then they got a lot of false positives because at the same time in the area that they were researching, it was like the Olympics or there was some big event where people were coming in. But when they were searching for Visa, they were searching for Visa so they could get in.
Yeah.
To the country. So there was a lot of that. So I think it is important and really interesting in terms of like the social listening aspect of it and picking up when people say, but the context definitely matters, as I'm sure you know, Crystal.
I think one of the best, like I would say, like master classes and people who do social listening well is Southwest Airlines. They have an entire, like I've done, like read so many marketing reports on their, like how they engage in social listening for customer service, for research, for marketing. It's like they're a masterclass in social media in social listening, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. We could do a whole nother thing on social listening. I think it's really interesting.
And like how you can control
I think it's a lot of pressure. When I see a really clever account from, it's like Wendy's or whatever, and they get on a good roll, and I think, oh man, whoever's running that now, there's getting like more and more publicity. It's like, how do you come up with a few good one-liners, a few good replies, and then suddenly everyone's like, oh, I want to see what they do next. So I always think, like, oh, that would make me super nervous. I'm glad I don't have to. Nobody ever reads like anything I write on Twitter. So luckily, I've never had any pressure to come up with like something clever based on other people.
Yeah. So you're not going to do the QuestionPro takeover on Twitter,
No. I mean, you know what? Let me just like George Costanza. I'll think of something clever. Like 2 weeks after. I'm sitting there like, I should have written that.
Are you that guy?
I should have said this. Yeah, this is what I
like you like leave and then you're like, wait.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like
come back.
8 comments down, I'll come up with the perfect reply and it'll be too late. But...
Awesome.
That's awesome. Perfect. Any more questions, Crystal?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Patrick. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for having me.
See you later.